City Council in Wilmington put off a decision Tuesday night to get tougher on homeless people in the downtown area.
Now, some business owners have asked council for help, saying their sales are being negatively impacted by homeless individuals hanging around their doors. WECT's Anaya Cromartie live downtown after hearing from some of those business owners. So how is this all happening there, Anaya?
John, the owner of Port City Cheesesteak behind me is just one of many that I've talked to, and he says people laying in front of his business is driving away potential customers, and he hopes that city leaders can step in and help. Chap Wallace has owned Port City Cheesesteaks for almost a decade. It's located in the heavily traveled area of Front Street.
We see a ton of people coming and going at different times of year, all through the year.
Wallace says he's experienced issues with homeless people hanging out in front of his business and others. He believes it's even kept potential customers from going downtown.
People who have frequented our establishments for years, and we hear feedback from them at a lot of times they don't, feel like they want to come down here due to feeling unsafe, being harassed, and the general uncleanliness.
Wallace tells me some homeless people have slept in front of the restaurant doors, they've asked people for money, and have even relieved themselves on the sidewalk.
We've all had to personally or have employees who unfortunately had to do it, clean up human waste.
At Tuesday night's council meeting, Councilman Luke Waddell introduced an ordinance that would keep people from sleeping on city property from 10 at night to 7 in the morning. Mayor Bill Saffo led the effort to table that proposal for now.
The last thing that we want to do is to arrest anybody and to criminalize this. But I think that, at some point in time, if we have to take drastic action, we will. But obviously that's the last resort that a police officer is going to use is to take some kind of drastic action. We would ask them to either move along or we'll take them to get services if necessary.
Wallace said he realizes solving the homeless issue will take a lot of work.
I totally understand where the council comes from on a lot of these issues. And they are limited in the scope of what they can do.
He's just hoping leaders find a solution that allows customers to visit his business without worrying about their safety. Mayor Saffel tells me that between now and the next time they discuss a homeless ordinance, he hopes to have a full breakdown of where the money is going to help the problem, as well as what police officers can do to help.
Anaya, council plans to take up that ordinance at the next meeting, correct?
That is correct, at their first meeting in September.
All right, Anaya Cromartie live in downtown tonight. Anaya, thanks.